Welcome to another episode of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker on this March 9th, 2022. Our client for today is the top 5 million TV shows of all time.
Behold, trapped in a hellscape of their own invention, socially unaware old white men bound by the pretense of being fake lawyers yet knowing no law, no exquisite Latin terminology, they are inexplicably compelled to quibble over minutia, squabble over triflings, and bicker like those who value their backyards far too highly without even knowing the difference between an easement and an alleyway. At this very moment, you have entered the heart of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. Let's get started.
Our glorious president, Donald J. Trump,
What?
currently on a 4-year sabbatical, has another new branch of the armed services ready to unveil when he returns to active duty in 2025. Due to bold voter suppression laws, gerrymandering, and Russian hacker bots, his reinstatement is assured. So start training now for his greatest addition to America's military might. Earth Force. As a member of Earth Force, you will serve proudly as the first line of defense against sand sharks, mole people, pukas, those scary monsters from Tremors, belligerent gophers, C.H.U.Ds, sarlaccs, sandinistas, spelunking junkies, radicalized prairie dogs, them, giant sandworms, sleestaks, and any critter that threatens the surface of our great nation. The United States Air Force, we're not afraid to get our hands dirty. Join today.
Okay, so once again, we have another ad for the U.S. military's extra service, but in this case, it's the Earth Force.
Yeah, it's going to be in 3 years. It's going to start, and so start training. Get a shovel. Start learning how to shovel better.
Shovel better.
Yeah,
That's right. If you're really good at shoveling, they'll hire you in the Earth Force.
yeah, it's a very necessary skill. The C.H.U.D aren't going to just come out all the time. You got to shovel down immediately.
I like how you brought out C.H.U.D. For those of you who have never heard of the term C.H.U.D before, it goes back to, I think, the 70s.
No,
Late
80s.
70s, early, is it the 80s?
82,
Stands for a cannibalistic humanoid urban dweller.
No, it's underground dweller.
You sure it's not urban?
Yeah, it's underground.
Underground. Cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller. So, and for those of you who are paying attention on TikTok, hey, Greg, this is going to be an interesting comment somebody made. They said that I look cool on TikTok, which means that somebody has interesting eyesight. So, but thank you.
You mean your wife? Your wife
cool,
wrote that?
the cool comment here on TikTok. If you want to watch this, we're actually running our podcast live right now on YouTube. It's the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. And right now it is myself and Greg, because our other co-host, Brendan, is still on sabbatical for an extended period of time until life changes. So anyway, today, however, our client is the top 5 million television shows of all time, which we're going to tell you what they are. Greg is going to start, though. And Greg, I'd say give us your list, and then I'll give you my list, which I haven't really compiled, but I kind of have an idea. And we'll go from there. So go ahead. And what are your top 2.5 million shows?
Well, I was going to start from the bottom. So
the bottom meaning number one?
No, the bottom of a list is the bottom. So the worst show, the least of these great shows.
Okay.
Coming in at 2.5 millionth. Herman's Head.
What?
Herman's Head.
What is Herman's Head?
You never saw Herman's Head?
I've never heard of Herman's Head.
It was early Fox. When Fox started, remember they were throwing all that shit against the wall, seeing what sticks?
Right. I mean, before Married with Children came about, I guess. That was their first big show, wasn't it?
I think it was after that they still were just doing some crazy shit.
Yeah.
They had a show called Herman's Head.
Okay.
Where it was kind of a very high concept show where it was a normal sitcom with like a dude and his friends, but Herman's head, inside his head, there'd be actors playing all of his emotions. So there'd be like his anxiety would be an actress, his, I guess, aggression would be this actor dude. And so whenever he confronted someone in real life, they'd switch to what's going on in his head. And all these actors would be like, shut up. No, you should punch the guy. And then, one of the characters would be like, in his head that represented his emotions would be like, no, that's not cool. Like his id and super ego.
So basically it's like a show about the little angel on one shoulder and the little devil on the other shoulder.
Kind of, yeah.
That doesn't sound like that great of a show, Greg.
It wasn't. That's why it's 2.5 million. I'm starting from the bottom. We have a week, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. This is a marathon show.
Yeah.
We'll never be getting off of this show. We'll never go to work again or eat. So what in reality, this is one of your favorite shows, though, you're saying.
I'm going back. I'm flipping the bitch switch. Number one show of all time in my book.
It's a sandwich.
As far as just quality of writing, acting, everything, I'd have to say The Wire. Even though there's a lot of shows where I'm just like, but sometimes I'd rather watch them more. They're more watchable just because they're more fun, maybe over the top. But as far as like if I was a film critic, judging things by the quality of all of the parts, I would say The Wire is the best TV show ever made. 5 seasons. Everything's great about it. I wouldn't change a thing.
Unfortunately, Greg, I have to agree with you.
Finally.
I also agree that I was positive you were going to say The Sopranos was number 1.
It's up there. I think that's number 2, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think The Sopranos is more watchable. It's kind of funner to watch The Sopranos.
I don't know. I have seen The Wire far more times than I've seen The Sopranos. I think I've watched Sopranos like twice all the way through. But The Wire I've seen at least 5 times.
I want to. I've seen it twice.
Okay.
And because it's such a rich show, like you keep discovering shit. Like when I saw it the second time, I didn't even realize some of the things from the second season. Like, oh, that's what they're talking about in the 5th season. Like, I didn't get it. It was too much. It was such a dense, well thought out show that I didn't even know some of the stuff. Sopranos, though, I gotta say, does that too. Seeing The Sopranos, like I've seen The Sopranos maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
3 or 4 times. I forgot things where like the 8th season, I'm like, oh, they're talking about that thing in the 2nd season. At the time, I didn't realize it. When I first watched it, I was just like, what are they talking about? This random thing. And I was like, oh, it all ties in.
Yeah, for me, The Wire was hard to start. In other words, to start to get into. I watched, I think, for like the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then I just put it aside. I was just like not really into it. And then I was like hearing about other people's accolades for The Wire. And I went, okay, let me give this another shot. So I started it over again, watched the first 4 episodes, and then I kept going. And then I started really getting into it, and it really started to make sense. It's kind of like the exposition of it was the best part of it. Was like it was just rolling out these characters, and they all had depth. Like even the smallest characters had these different layers to them, and they would give them that extra time. And then the other thing that I thought was the best thing that they did, and I don't think I've seen any show ever do something like that, was that every season kind of changed the main characters and focused on and created new main characters and focused on a different aspect of this one city. So with The Wire, it's like the first season was about the police force trying to get a wire to be able to listen to drug dealers. And it gave a huge insight into...
And that seemed pretty typical. That seemed like,
Right. It was more procedural. It was more like a typical cop show. But it still gave more depth to the bad guys, where eventually you couldn't really tell the difference between the bad guys and the good guys, really, because they were all flawed to some extent, but they all had good qualities. Then the second season took it to a different part of the world of Baltimore, where they went to the docks. Right, exactly. Went to the docks, and the guys were dealing with that. And then the third season was, I think that was where they went to the schools, right? And the fourth season was specifically dealing with like the city council and the election process within it. And then the 5th season was taking it from the perspective of being within the newspaper And understandably so, since the guy who created it was a newspaper reporter himself, formerly for the Baltimore Sun. So just the fact that they delved that deep every season just made that the best thing for me. So Sopranos, I think you're right, it has a lot of rewatchability, but it doesn't have that same depth. It has depths into the characters that it has, but it doesn't go into, the different aspects of Newark that it could get into, and take it from different areas.
Well, when I was watching The Wire, I and many people have said this since. I mean, I was the only person who said this, but it's like this is like a sociology course in college. Like every season, if you watch every season, it's like you're learning about politics, how local politics work, unions, education. It's like a full-on, like even though it doesn't feel like education, it's a fun, interesting show with really intriguing characters. But actually watching the show, you're like, wow, I learned a lot about just how the world works. Because that's just a microcosm, Baltimore, but that's probably most cities are like that. Yeah.
So we're kind of agreed about the top two shows of all time.
Yeah.
The Wire and Sopranos. And I'm willing to give the Sopranos number 2 spot. The real question now is, what's number 3? What's the number 3 spot, Greg? And that's one, there's some dispute. Some people consider this show, in my opinion, to be the number 1 show of all time.
And are we sticking to drama, or are we gonna let?
Well, I mean, I think we're just gonna go like best shows overall. I think we just like combine them all. I mean, I think originally I kind of wanted to do like dramas and comedies, but I think that we could just mix them up because I don't know what comedy can stack up to The Wire or The Sopranos.
I think Mr. Show can.
It's like a sketch show, though. It was a sketch show,
and yet there's such smart writing that has such insight into human nature. Even though it's just hilarious. Sometimes it's really stupid, but it's still like it's as fulfilling. It's not like eating junk food.
I think for me, the one that would come closest to The Wire, and it's not on anybody's list, I think, except for maybe way down. For me, it would be Blackadder.
Oh, yeah.
Blackadder is probably my favorite comedy in the sense it's not a sitcom per se, and it's not a sketch show.
It's kind of a sitcom. But I mean, it's a weird sitcom. It's like,
it's true. I mean, it's a sitcom from medieval times and it's a historical sitcom, and maybe that's why I'm attracted to it.
And every season changed too. That was like a rare thing. Like, okay, it's Blackadder, but these are totally different characters technically.
Yeah,
it's a different century even.
Yeah, it was always a different Blackadder. Like, I think the cool thing about it for me with Blackadder was the different Blackadders were different. Like they were all like some kind of useless human,
kind of sniveling weasel.
Some smarter than others, all with a cunning plan to be able to get ahead and to try and stay alive. And the other cool thing about every season of Blackadder was that all the main characters died at the end of each season.
But Blackadder though does this remarkable thing, as you know, in the last few episodes, it turns into this incredible tragedy drama. There's not many laughs in the last episode. It's like
you're talking about World War One,
and all of a sudden they just take this record scratch left turn, and it's like that was so powerful. Like, we've been watching this goofy sitcom, quote unquote sitcom for 4 seasons or whatever, short seasons, and then they're like getting all heavy and all the guys are like talking about their mortality and how they're going to die and life and death. And it's like, and then the last scene is so moving, maybe because it's just like, wait, this is a comedy. What the fuck?
I don't know. I mean, the fact is that that particular season of Blackadder I think it was, you probably feel that way because it's closer to our current times as opposed to all of the other ones, which were a little further away historically, because they all talked about death and themselves dying at the end.
It was funny, though. It was like funny deaths. It was like,
funny. Not if you thought about it. I mean, think about how Blackadder died in the first season, right? He's on the chair that, something would come up and split his behind open with like a spike, and
That's pretty funny.
it's not funny if you think about it.
No,
it's a
no.
very painful way
But
to
it was
go.
played for laughs, I'm saying. The last
Okay.
episode was not played for laughs. It's like, it is like really like heavy, like anti-war, like war fucking sucks.
Yeah.
All these poor fuckers who don't even know why they're dying. They're just gonna jump over this out of this trench and die for no good reason. It's pretty harsh. It's pretty
I don't know. I guess I just didn't take it that way, but maybe I need to rewatch that particular episode.
it's
I mean,
serious.
of the different seasons of Blackadder, the season of World War One wasn't necessarily my favorite because of the fact that it was, I think, because set in World War One, and a lot of stuff in World War One is, I think I've seen too much of it, possibly. But either way, I think it's because it takes the different, it has different takes on history, which is similar to The Wire in my point of view. In other words, they're taking themselves out of different milieus and putting them in new ones, and using similar characters but taking them in a different way. And I think that's what I like
it's
about
more similar to is American Horror Story. There's been a few shows in the past few years. There's a show on ABC that does the same thing where every season's a different plot.
Yeah.
Same actors though.
Right.
Some new actors, but they're playing totally different people. It's basically just like a anthology show. It's like
Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked American Horror Story. I wouldn't put it up in one of the top shows of all time just because it was silly, and it wasn't supposed to be really a silly show.
I liked its silliness,
But I found it kind of too silly for its subject material, because
I think it's up there in the top 50.
yeah,
I'll
I
say
think it's
that.
going to be. I don't know, but I wouldn't even put it in the top 50. I'd put it. I don't know where I'd put it.
So
actually,
you put it below St. Elsewhere.
I never watched St. Elsewhere.
In the 80s, that was like probably one of the best shows ever made.
I'd
It
say
was-
American
it was-
Horror Story is probably up there with the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
No, it is not. Shut up. That is just so wrongheaded. That's crazy.
That would be a great season of American Horror Story if they could take place in one of those reality shows
They
and
might
start
do that.
offing all of the
They kind of
housewives.
did. One of the season was like making fun of those what do you call those shows? The real crime shows, true crime shows. It
Uh-huh.
was based on that. Like there was, a TV show and they were like investigating this famous serial killer, but then of course it intrudes on it. So they do like talk about lots of we're in the bitchin' kitchen.
I thought this would be good to
I gotta move my thing so I'm centered.
make things look a little different, because then I can drink my coffee and it looks like I'm actually in a kitchen.
Yes, that's important. That kitchen is just too perfect. They have all the color-coded coffee cups.
It definitely doesn't look like your kitchen.
No, it doesn't. Nobody should have a kitchen that organ. That's just like sick.
It's almost a psychotic kitchen because it has like color-coded cups up above
yeah.
us.
You put the green cup in the blue area. Get out of my house. That's a little much.
Oh well, sorry about
But
that.
so I mean that's the thing though.
Okay.
There are so many great TV shows coming out every year. It's hard to like when we were kids, there were so few good shows. Most TV sucked. So it's pretty easy to be like, oh yeah, obviously like MASH or Hill Street Blues. Yeah, best shows. Now every month I'm watching some new show on Netflix or something or HBO, and I'm just like, fuck, this is so good.
I know there's so much quality television. I think that we have to give Sopranos credit for kind of kickstarting that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they made these full season storylines, and I think The Wire helped enhance that. But I would say for my number 3, I'm actually going to give it to Breaking Bad.
That's up there with me.
Yeah, Breaking Bad, and I was like I was torn between Breaking Bad and Sopranos for number 2. For me, The Wire will probably always be number 1. But Breaking Bad just has such a rich storyline, and there's such an excellent acting that takes place from a number of the different characters in that show. And Robert Cranston, is that his name? Bryan Cranston.
Except for his son. His son
What's it?
sucks. It's some of the condition where I don't
Yeah,
know.
but it was a real condition the kid had. That
I'm
wasn't.
sorry, he's a terrible
that
actor, though.
wasn't him acting.
No excuse. This isn't everyone gets a gold star. He was a terrible actor. I know he has a condition in real life, but he's a bad actor. But my thing,
he gets like a participation award.
I think if Breaking Bad somehow erased the first season and a half, it might be number one. I think that show is brilliant, but it's also like flawed. That show was very weird. The first season, they didn't quite know what they had. They just thought they had a cool shtick, like, "Ooh, a math teacher becomes a meth dealer."
Yeah.
Or a science teacher. Isn't that interesting? But then it gets way more complex than that. Totally talking about the nature of evil.
The first season, though, don't forget, had the whole sequence when he's out in the desert in his underwear having to deal with killers.
No, it was. That's what I mean. That's the shtick.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's kind of a fun, interesting.
And that was
idea.
another show that I got stuck on at that point. I was like, he's out here in his underwear, and like they're trying to be kind of cutesy, and maybe this isn't really my thing. And so that's another show I put off to the side for a while before I finally got back to it. Which reminds me of a TV show, which isn't necessarily one of the best of all time, and it's a comedy, but it's one that I watched a couple of episodes and I put it off to the side. I'm like, and then I heard the accolades for it. I'm like, all right, I'll give it another chance.
Hazel?
No. No, it was Room 222. It's Captain Kangaroo, Greg. That's the one.
227.
You kind of look like Captain Kangaroo today. Anyway, no, it was Schitt's Creek with Eugene Levy and his son.
I'm not thrilled by that show. Everyone I know who I trust their opinion loves that show and tells me to watch it. And they're like, "No, Greg, the second season gets better. Trust me." And then I watch the second season, and I'm still just like, and I love Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara. I grew up watching SCTV. I love everything they've done.
Yeah.
I'm still not that thrilled with that show.
What happens is Catherine O'Hara gets stranger as the show goes on and becomes even more fascinating to watch. And then Eugene Levy's son really kind of comes into his own as the show goes on. Yeah, the second season wasn't fantastic either, but it all kind of grew on me after a while. I think the one that made it hardest for me was seeing Chris Elliott in the show, and his shtick of being the mayor of the town grew old really fast for me. And I just kind of wanted to see him written off the show totally. But after a while, even he grew on me, and I saw his role in it. But, it was just this, it was really Catherine O'Hara who I think, and Dan Levy, who really made the show. Eugene was fine. He was more of a straight man actually for the show. Which is odd for him because he's typically not a straight man.
No, he's a straight man. So in American Pie, he was the straight man. He was the nerdy dad.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
He was like, "Son, what are you doing? Stop fucking that pie."
Right. But anyway, so in terms of this particular show, that's the thing that really got me. So, and there was just these nuances to it that were really worth watching. So anyway, that's as a comedy. That's what I'm sorry, everybody. I just hit my. What's that?
Speaking of Chris Elliott, where would you put Get a Life in the comedy?
Know. Again, never heard of that show.
What? Okay, Fox. This is a way after that period when Fox had some like major hits like Beverly Hills and shit. They gave Chris Elliott a comedy called Get a Life, and it was the weirdest fucking show other than Twin Peaks on network TV. It was like Chris. If you can imagine Chris Elliott having his druthers and making a comedy, even back then, when TV wasn't that free and easy, they just let him go nuts. And the show is ridiculously weird, especially for its time. It'd probably be still weird now, but 1988, 87, on normal commercial TV, it was. Me and my friends, it was like the only show we watched. We watched Twin Peaks. We'd watch Get a Life.
I think in 88, 87, that was like the end of my college career, and I was dealing more with avoiding my finals and drinking a lot of beer. I wasn't watching.
I didn't watch TV at all.
I wasn't watching much television because I think I was living off campus and I had like this crappy little TV in the apartment I was living with a roommate, and so yeah, I didn't really watch much TV at that time period.
I didn't either, but those shows, that's how good they were. Me and my friends would be like, stop what we're doing.
Uh-huh.
We got to watch Get Life.
I don't know. I think I wasn't really that into Chris Elliott. I mean, I knew he came out of the David Letterman show, which,
I love Chris Elliott.
you know, David Letterman definitely had one of the better shows of all time.
Yeah. The early ones, they were just so quirky and weird. Like, I could believe how bizarre it was. Like,
yeah, I think he created the institution of top 10 lists. So nod to David Letterman for our top 5 million TV shows of all time.
Yeah,
that's right. He didn't do 5 million. It's funny, whenever you lean back like that, you look like my little person friend who's doing a show with me. It's like I have to pat you on the head. Oops, wrong hand. Over here. Where is it? Little pat you on the head over here.
We represent the Lollipop Guild.
I kind of like this this background. For those of you who are not watching this, who are just listening to the podcast, if you go to our YouTube channel, I've been experimenting with backgrounds, and I think this is a good one for Greg and I to do when it's just he and I doing the show. This little
kind of like a Prairie Home Companion. It's like, oh,
it's a little fireplace with some fall leaves behind us.
But why does the pumpkin say Zoom on it?
Because Zoom is the company that we use for this.
So it's a Zumo lantern? but none of the other things had Zoom written logos, like the kitchen didn't have a Zoom.
I think it maybe it was hidden and they didn't have it in, but maybe they were being cute with the pumpkin and they put their brand name on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so anyway, Schitt's Creek I think is a great comedy, but obviously not for everybody. I'd say stick it out to the end, Greg. Stick it out to the end of the show. Force your way through all the seasons.
I might have to.
Yeah. It's worth watching. Anyway, so, you know, in terms of comedies, the one that I've seen on so many lists as the #1 comedy of all time is Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't watch it when it came out. And I finally watched it a couple of years ago. I watched all of it. And I can't say that I consider it the best comedy of all time.
I think it's up there. I mean, I
had a lot of funny moments on it, and it was, culturally, I could see why people would say that. I mean, I can understand that perspective, but I don't know. I mean, I wish I could give it more credit. I'd like it to. I mean, I used to like Seinfeld's stand-up comedy, so I liked the aspect where he would like do his comedy routine on the show. But you know, I don't really know what I would say is the best comedy of all time. You know, I mean, maybe Saturday Night Live, just because they've had so many exceptional episodes, even though they've had many years of horror and crap.
Even the early ones, though, like I have the DVDs of the first 3 seasons, and there's so much shit on those. Like, it's not funny a lot of the time. I mean, and it was basically just because it was new and exciting.
Yeah.
And it was, wow, they're doing this on TV. They're talking about smoking a joint.
Well, and they're doing it live, but it also launched the careers of so many very hilarious people. But I do remember there was some anniversary show where Chris Rock was on, and he comes on and he says, in this room stand the people responsible for some of the worst movies of all time.
And some of the worst television sketches of all time.
And I was like, yes, Chris Rock was right. Anyway, and that's the thing, is like a lot of these really funny guys did some horrible stuff on Saturday Night Live, but you know, it's encapsulated, it's there as this monument to American comedy. But actually I think I do have even more so than Blackadder for me. I think my favorite comedy show of all time is Monty Python's Flying Circus. Because as far as I was concerned, there is a very rare skit that didn't land with me on that particular show. I was laughing through most everything that
I don't want to
did.
sound blasphemous, but I think Mr. Show's a better sketch comedy show than Monty Python. Monty Python, there's a lot of skits that I watched that my whole life, and I loved it.
Your entire life you watched it? You didn't watch anything else, just Monty Python?
No, my entire life I watched it. I didn't say my entire life that's all I watched.
Your lifetime was always just Monty Python.
When I was a little kid, it was on the PBS station in New York, so I watched it. And
now, I'll be honest, did you watch it just because there was occasionally a boob that was shown?
There was that one episode with a boobie, yeah. No,
right.
It was. I thought it was hilarious. I mean, I think I watched it before I even cared about boobies.
Yeah.
So I was watching when I was like 8 years old, thinking it was kind of funny. I didn't really get, but as an adult, I look back, and even as a teenager, I was like, some of these skits are like too smart for their own good. Like the ones with Eric Idle, just thinking it's funny, listing off a bunch of philosophers in a funny accent. It's just like, that's really not that funny.
Oh,
You're just
see,
showing
I
off.
thought that was very funny.
I didn't. I thought like the upper class twit thing, which was just pure dumb humor, was fucking still cracks me up to this day.
It's brilliant, especially when they trip over the matchboxes. I love that.
Yes. And John Cleese's breathless announcing, like, "Oh, Nigel! Oh my God, Nigel! Nigel's run himself over with the car." Like, it's hilarious. And it's stupid as fuck. There's no brains behind that. It's just funny. It's
But
dumb
then there's
humor.
like the animation of Terry Gilliam in it, which nobody had ever done anything like that, and nobody
Those just made
since.
me scratch my head, but in a good way. I liked how weird they were. I never really laughed, except for the teeth guy. The guy is like, Professor Morton and his amazing teeth.
The musical teeth.
But I mean, a lot of times it was just like, wow, this is the weirdest shit I've ever seen. I can't believe I'm watching it on TV. This weird shit, like,
Yeah, nothing like it, and really nothing since. I mean, I would probably need to watch all of Mr. Show because I can't really put it down. I mean, I like Bob Odenkirk, I like David Cross, I like their sensibilities, so I know I've enjoyed the show, and I've actually recommended what I've seen to some people who have gotten more into it than I ever did, and I think that's why it's telling for me because there are things that I'll go back to. I'll give them another chance, and then I can give that point of view. But for some reason, I never went back to Mr. Show.
I gotta say,
like I did that with Flight of the Conchords on the HBO, and Flight of the Conchords at first I couldn't quite get into.
I haven't seen those. Once.
Yeah. The fact is that it's another one of those things that takes a little while to get into, but then some of the stuff is just really funny. But I really like the quirky humor of things. It's just something. Man, we're like barely getting started, and we're already nearly time for the cooking segment.
We're not 2.5 million in at all.
No, we've barely made it to number 3.
I wanted to say though, real quick, The Simpsons, even though after season like 13,
aren't they on like season 30 now? Aren't they still on the air?
But the first 13 seasons are just like so fucking well done that like that's always going to be a high point for me. Like a television in America, like The Simpsons. I to be honest, I haven't watched them after season 13. I don't know. Maybe there were some good moments. I hear though, it's not worth your time. The Simpsons is just diminishing returns.
I mean, there must be something positive about it for it to still be on the air. I mean, because normally shows get canceled.
I know, but Urkel was on the air. Urkel was number 1 in America. That didn't mean it was good.
But not for as many years as The Simpsons.
No, that's true.
That's my point. It's like the longevity of it. I mean, right now, The Simpsons, I believe, is the longest running comedy on television.
That's ever run, or even drama. Has any drama?
I think it finally just beat Gunsmoke, because Gunsmoke was one that was on the air the longest, and I think it just recently beat Gunsmoke. So I think you might be right there. But that's the weird thing about it is like I never watched. I saw a couple of episodes of The Simpsons, and I just couldn't get into it. I gave like what was that other?
You hate animated stuff, though.
I don't hate it.
You said you don't get into it.
I don't get into it, but that doesn't mean I hate it. I mean, I gave like American Dad a shot, and what was the Family Guy one? I watched a few episodes of that because people recommended it to me. And I'm like, it's. I don't know. I think animation comedy. I think it's cheating a little bit, because they're able to do things with bodies that actual humans can't do. And
so you're saying it's like when you change the key on a song, you do a karaoke, it's cheating?
No, that's completely different because it's still within the realm of humanity to do something like that.
It's still cheating.
But what something does in animation can't be done by humans. Like
and that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty.
I don't know. That's a beauty.
You can do this amazing thing, and I can only see it thanks to animation, and I never would have.
I think for me, it's like I want to see it done in real life as opposed to an animation. It's kind of like when the Lord of the Rings movie came out, the animated one. It was great that their one finally came out, but it was disappointing also because it was a cartoon. And then when it's finally about live action, I'm like, okay, I mean, obviously there's animation within the Lord of the Rings movies, but it's designed to look real, whereas animation is just designed to look cartoony. Here's a weird piece of trivia. Do you know what the word cartoon actually means?
Yeah, it's the sketch that an artist would do before he made a painting. It's like the preliminary sketch.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I just looked that up the other day because I was having this discussion. Oh, that's right, you're a comic book nerd. I was having this discussion with one of my sons who's really into anime, and how I just don't watch anime. I'm like anime is just cartoons anyway. And then we were like, okay, well, what does the word anime actually mean? Well, I'm like, well, it's just the Japanese word for cartoons. it's just, people made it fancy by calling it anime, but it really just means cartoons. Because I'm like, when I was a kid, we watched Speed Racer and Marine Boy and whatever else.
Marine Boy?
Don't you remember Marine Boy? He had oxygum, so if you chewed it, he could breathe underwater.
Are you serious?
I'm totally serious. That was a show that I watched as a kid, which was a Japanese cartoon.
Was that in the Philippines?
No, this was in the United States. I watched it in the United States, yeah. And there was Star Blazers, which came out after those.
I remember Star Blazers.
Yeah, Star Blazers was kind of like the last cartoon that I watched as I grew. Well, what happened was I would watch Star Blazers when I was in junior high. Like before I would go to school, I would watch it on TV. And then I moved to the Philippines, and then it was like I had no options anymore. So I think that's what ruined me for cartoons, was I no longer had the opportunity to watch them as I was growing through.
Well, you wouldn't want to. Star Blazers was definitely a step above. Like they actually had like stories that talked about human emotion and stuff. Like when we grew up, cartoons were insipid. Like they're written for 4-year-olds, like Super Friends.
Super Friends was annoying as crap because they took what could have been good, which was the superhero genre, which had like pathos and what have you in the comic books themselves, and they made it cartoony by adding the Super Friends, the Wonder Twins, and the frickin' monkey or the dog or whatever the hell was on it.
It still could have been good, though. There's seriously, every line in that show was just written like, can a 4-year-old understand this? Okay, go with it. But I wanted to say, speaking of animated, I'll get off this after this. In the 90s, when all I basically watched was like 2 shows maybe, the one show I'd run home from wherever I was Batman the Animated Series.
You would run home? What year was this?
In the mid-90s, I'd be like, oh, it's 3:00. There was no TV shows at night. I'd be like, I gotta watch that show tonight. After Twin Peaks and maybe Get a Life.
Wait, you would have been in your 20s at that point, right?
Yeah, I was in my 20s. And basically everything on mainstream primetime television, I could give 2 shits about.
I think I deliberately watched Batman Mask of the Phantasm because it was supposedly like this great movie.
It's not as good as the show. I've seen that.
I watched it and I went, all right, it didn't live up to the hype for me, so I didn't really. And I think that kept me from getting into cartoons again.
It was on Fox Kids, right? Yeah. So Batman the Animated Series had better scripting and characterization than most things in primetime. Like Walker, Texas Ranger, for example. Or
that's Walker, Texas, a Ranger, you mean?
A Ranger.
That was for Sanchez if you still
Party Ranger?
Anyway, so I'm sorry, I caught you mid thought.
Wait, what about a Walker Wedding Planner? We should make that show. Walker Wedding Planner.
He gets your wedding cakes, and he kicks ass and fights crime.
Yeah, if somebody acts up at the wedding.
Food is for eating. Food is for eating. Food is for eating with Waspy Soda Pop.
Hey there, everybody. This is Waspy Soda Pop, and this is Food is for Eating. Today, we got a classic English toad in the hole. Here are your ingredients. 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. You don't want any of that specific flour. The specific purposes, like trying to change the world, you want the all-purpose flour. It'll do anything. It'll throw footballs, all that stuff. Then a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. Get a pinch of freshly ground black pepper. 3 large eggs. Beat them. 1.5 cups of milk. You can use whatever you want, like a whole milk or skim milk or probably not buttermilk. I'd avoid that one. because then you'll have 2 tablespoons of butter, and you want to melt that. Then 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil, and then you want to get 4 common bufo or European toads, although a natterjack can be substituted. So, you can get those at your local common toad gallery. So next you want to make the batter. In a large bowl, you whisk together the flour with the salt and the pitch pepper. Make a well in the center of the flour. Pour in the eggs, the milk, the melted butter into the well. Whisk into the flour until smooth. Cover it and let it stand for 30 minutes. That's metric minutes too. Then you preheat the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. That's, of course, metric Fahrenheit. You coat the bottom and sides of an 8x12 inch or a 9x9 inch ceramic or metal casserole dish with vegetable oil. Do not use a glass baking dish because it gets really hot. Place a rack in the bottom third of the oven. Put the empty dish on the rack in the oven as it preheats. Then you're going to brown your toads. While the oven is coming to temperature, you heat a tablespoon of vegetable oil in a skillet on medium-high. Add the toads and brown them at least a couple of sizes. Now remember, before you put the toads into the pan, you got to whack them over the head with like a tiny little mallet to make sure they're unconscious, because otherwise they'll jump right out of there and you can't cook jumping toads. Okay, then you get your batter. After the toads have browned and the dish in the oven is hot, you pull the oven rack out a bit, put the toads in the casserole dish, and pour the batter over the toads. Oh yeah, it's looking really good. You're going to bake it at 425 degrees for about 20 to 30 minutes till the batter is risen and golden, and serve it at once. There you have it. Oh man, this is so mouth-watering, so tasty. This is Toad in the Hole Classic. And this is Food is for Eating.
So we haven't talked about our T-shirt designs in a while, but you can't cook a jumping toad. that could be a saying on a T-shirt.
Can't cook a jumping toad.
No, it's true. Can't cook a jumping toad.
Waspy is like upping his production values too. He's got like a music bed now.
Yeah.
It was like
8-bit.
It was like fancy.
It sounded like Mario Brothers 2. It sounded like 8-bit soundtrack.
8-bit.
8-bit, video game talk.
Oh, 8-bit. Oh, I didn't know what you were talking about.
In your bosom.
I'm going back to the kitchen. Anyway,
I
don't know, but that was an interesting recipe for today. It was a toad in the hole. I wasn't familiar with that. I think some people call what we called like a egg in a nest as toad in the hole in the United States, which is basically you take the circle out of the middle of a piece of bread and you cook it and you cook the egg inside of that. Some people call that an American toad in the hole. Are you
like
familiar
in
with
V for Vendetta?
I don't remember. I saw V for Vendetta once. I wasn't that impressed, so I don't remember much of it. So I just remember
that's a movie.
I just remember they had the Guy Fawkes masks, and that's pretty much it.
We just care about TV.
Exactly. We shouldn't be getting there. Oh, so we should go right into Ask Greg, though, so that we can get this. We can get right back to our client, dealing with our client.
He has an opinion, may not always be right. He's a real fake lawyer. He's old and he's white. Ask him a question, 'cause he's a good egg. For bogus advice, ask Greg. Ask Greg? Ask Greg!
Well, I think we have a very topical question for you today for Ask Greg. Dear Greg, can Bugs Bunny be liable for all of the violence that he committed against Elmer Fudd over the years?
Not all the time. A lot of times, Elmer Fudd instigates the aggression, and Bugs Bunny is just acting in self-defense. Elmer Fudd, remember, is trying to kill Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny's never trying to kill Elmer Fudd. He's just trying to defend himself, maybe play some semi-felonious pranks on him, misdemeanors, if you will.
I figure we need to be in the law offices right now.
Oh, thank you.
Discuss this one.
I gotta lean over here. For some reason, I'm never centered. Elmer J. Fudd was trying to murder Bugs Bunny every episode. So I can't imagine a jury ruling in favor of Elmer J. Fudd when he's a murderer, trying to kill a sentient creature.
You keep saying Elmer J. Fudd. What's the J stand for?
Jasper.
Is it Jasper?
No, I don't know.
Maybe it's Ja. It's just Elmer Jaffud.
Jaffud, I don't know. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think they ever revealed that. Which
Oh,
is
okay.
another thing, another suspicious thing.
Yeah.
You know, who's the reveal their middle name ever? Like, it's like an alias. You know, maybe under Elmer Jasperfoot he did some crimes, so now he's very secretive about the J.
Well, isn't Donald Trump's middle name begin with a J also?
Yes, Jasper.
You think? Oh, is that
Donald
Donald is Jasper?
Yeah,
So you think that Donald Trump got his middle name from Elmer Fudd?
probably, and he's about the same level of
Yeah.
intelligence. But Elmer J. Fudd does seem to have a heart. Sometimes he does seem to have, you know, he wants to kill Bugs Bunny. He's a murderer. He's a psychopath. But
Well, is he that, or is he just hungry?
he could go to the supermarket
And
buy
get
some
rabbit?
beef.
You can't get rabbit at the supermarket.
A certain specialty food guy, but that would still be killing a rabbit.
Yeah.
I'm saying he could go vegetarian. He could eat something. It's not like he's going to starve to death if he doesn't kill a sentient creature, Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny is not just a rabbit. He's a sentient creature.
Okay.
Who deserves human status. And the fact
Then it would
that
become cannibalism if he did kill him and eat him if he was given human
it would
status.
almost be cannibal. You're right. It would
Yeah.
be cannibalism.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think anything Bugs Bunny's done to Elmer J. Fudd has been anything more than a misdemeanor.
Uh-huh.
And considering that this other guy's trying to kill him all the time, I can't imagine a jury ruling in his favor. Like, oh, he put he gave you a hot foot after you try to murder him. Yeah, I don't think the jury's going to be like, oh, poor Elmer J. Fudd, he got a hot foot.
So Bugs Bunny essentially would be considered innocent because for self-defense purposes.
Self-defense, yeah.
Yeah. Even if he
much.
took a wrong turn in Albuquerque.
Well, there's no law against that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's good to hear.
Speaking of which,
yes,
he was always burrowing underground. So if Bugs Bunny ever turns evil, Earth Force will be there to stop him. His nefarious plans.
all right. Well, let's get back to our client for today to bring it in. Actually, to tie these two things together. I think Looney Tunes are better than The Simpsons.
I don't.
Well, I do.
I saw them as an adult,
Yeah.
and I was very underwhelmed because when I was a kid, I thought they were genius. I was like, nothing will ever be better than this.
Uh-huh.
Just like I think you once told me that, like, I'll watch these for the rest of my life. These are the best things ever. And I saw a bunch of them as an adult. There's still some great moments. Believe me, I still love some certain cartoons are brilliant. There's a lot of them with just grown jokes, just like, oh.
Well, yeah. I mean, the jokes of the era certainly have not necessarily aged well. That's quite true.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I can certainly reevaluate my point of view on it as we're talking about it. But I think that
It's
there
always
are
on TV.
some definitely moments within Looney Tunes that transcend culture. And that's the ones where they went into the operatic realm. Like when they did Don Giovanni,
What's
Bar-
opera doc?
the Barber of Seville, and the what's the other one with the Wagner with Ride of the Valkyries?
I killed the wabbit. I killed the wabbit.
Kill the wabbit, kill the wabbit. Yeah, I mean
That was some brilliant satire. Yeah, that
it was,
amazing.
and for its era, I think that's what makes it so much better. You know, I'm
And
trying
on
to.
top of that, even if it wasn't that funny, the cinematic animation of it was just beautiful. It was art as far as I'm concerned. Seriously, that's beautiful art to me.
Yeah, and to
the
think that it
animation
all
and-
started with, I don't know what it started with actually. You're the comic book nerd, so how far back does and again the cartoons were not in the beginning animated. They were called animated cartoons, and people called it cartoons because they didn't like saying animated cartoons as one word. It's kind of like movies became movies because people got tired of saying moving pictures, so
Yeah.
they just shortened it to movies. So animated cartoons, where does it? Does that goes back further than Disney, doesn't it? That's just the first full length, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't it go back to? Well, I mean, it goes back even further than Edison.
It goes back
but,
to almost the beginning of cinema. Like the first movies were like 1896.
Well, I think it goes back to flip books, doesn't it?
You're right. It's
Yeah.
before cinema. You're right.
Yeah, it goes back to whenever somebody put a bunch of different pictures together and then create animation. So I guess I can give credit to cartoons because maybe they're what created cinema.
Well, I don't know if they created it.
Well, the concept of moving pictures started
Yeah.
with actual pictures that were drawn as opposed to pictures that were taken.
Yeah, like the frames per second. But you could almost say that, who's that famous photographer who, as soon as he got a camera, he did like all those pictures of like a horse running, like he had a shutter stop.
I think they called him Horsey Bob was his name.
No, his name's like Breckenridge or something. He's a famous.
Is it Myron Breckenridge? Myra Breckenridge?
But if you've seen those in books, like just like where he actually was like, oh my God, with this camera, we can actually show you exactly how a horse does run. Slow it down and you'll see all those pictures.
Right.
So it almost probably gave people the idea like, oh, as you scan these, it's like moving. I can almost picture the horse moving.
You can picture the pictures?
Yeah, you can picture the horse moving. So I guess it was a short leap for some like smarty pants like Edison to say,
some smarty pants.
Maybe I could just do this. Maybe I could just.
That was Edison's nickname. He went by Thomas Smarty Pants Edison. That's what everyone called him.
No, it was Einstein.
Well, we're definitely going into extra time today for this particular client.
Because this is not TV.
Well, it's the top 5 million TV shows of all time. We kind of went into history, which is one of my failings is that I get stuck into history. But I do want to say top science fiction show of all time, Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Star Trek, close number 2.
No, Star Trek. No, not even close. Star Trek is written for 12-year-olds, not 5-year-olds.
It was not written for 12-year-olds. I mean, think of the barriers that it crossed.
No, most of them were, but then every now and then they'd write something like the Fred Gershwin episode about racial understanding. Where he's half black, half white.
Yeah,
that was some heavy shit.
Yeah,
but for a lot of the episodes were just.
And the fact is that Shatner was always in the middle of interracial sex.
Well, interspecies sex.
That too. At least he never did it with a broomstick. We never got to see that.
He would have. If he made a broomstick who came on to him, he'd fuck anything, that guy.
It's like if William Shatner as Captain Kirk was in Fantasia instead of Mickey Mouse as the Sorcerer's Apprentice, instead of him having all of the broomsticks carrying the buckets of water, he'd be banging on the broomsticks, is what you're saying.
Captain Kirk would have fucked a female C.H.U.D if he met one. He would have fucked a Sarlacc.
Now, what you said Sarlacc before? I don't remember Sarlaccs. What are those from?
Return of the Jedi, when they throw that big giant mouth in the pit, the sand pit.
That would be Empire. Was that Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back?
At the beginning of Return of the Jedi, Jabba the Hutt throws I think Luke. Does he throw Luke into the Sarlacc pit?
Oh, right. Okay, so it's the big worm inside the sand, where Boba Fett got eaten.
It's pretty much a sandworm, yeah.
Got it. It was basically stealing from Dune is what it was doing.
Yeah, you see a giant mouth. It's like 30 feet wide, the mouth. It's just
like,
blood.
Yeah, because they bring that back in the show, I think The Mandalorian, and it's either Mandalorian or the Boba Fett show that's on Disney right now. Somebody goes to go, oh yeah, it was Mandalorian. They go to deal with the Sarlacc again. I think they kill another one. Because I think Boba Fett had to kill it to survive. Anyway, regardless, going into movies as well. But, some people are saying The Mandalorian may be up there in terms of new TV shows that could do well in terms of favorite lists.
I like The Mandalorian a lot more than many of the Star Wars films.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. It's no contest.
Actually, I'm thinking of a comedy show, the top of the list, All in the Family.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think, because I remember growing up watching that one, and it dealt with so many heavy issues. So, I mean, it wasn't strictly comedy. Everything wasn't funny in it, because it would
mostly it was, though.
Well, most of it, but it was bully humor, it was insulting humor, because it was generally Archie Bunker insulting everybody.
But it was hilarious, though.
From his racist perspective.
Don Rickles is hilarious. I'll go down on record. I know I'm not supposed to like Don Rickles, but that guy is just naturally funny.
Why aren't you supposed to like Don Rickles?
Because his jokes are based on racism and bullying people. But he's just
so somehow he was able to get away with it, too. Even in today's enlightened age.
I know. I hear other comedians just say that. No, he was all about love. Like he would always do this like little homily when he was done.
Yeah.
I love everybody. It's all for fun. And I'm still just like, most people that would not watch today. With the woke
but
people,
he wouldn't
they'd
say
be like,
that it's not. He wouldn't say it's for everybody. He would talk to the people that he insulted and then give them firm compliments and talk about how much he loved them individually. And that's how he kind of got away with it.
Fantastic way, like, hey, look at this black guy. I love you. I love you. I love you. But, yeah.
And you know, and I liked his TV show. I liked CPO Sharky that he was on. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't know if I ever watched it. I remember when it was on. But I think it was like too adult for me because you're a few years older than me. So I wanted to watch Happy Days. I didn't want to watch.
Well, I watched. I mean, it's like all these shows. We didn't have much choice in the matter because there was only like 3 shows on.
Well, you could choose though. You could
between
like
the 3 shows that were on. Yes.
You know, I hate
or go play with your toys.
I hated All in the Family until I was like 20. I
got
into it because it was too adult for me. I didn't get what they were talking about, like talking about politics and race.
Yeah, I guess back then because I mean I'm 3 years older than you. Something like that. So at those ages, yeah, it's much different because I was raised watching the frickin' news. You know, like we would watch Walter Cronkite every night at dinner. That was like from an early age. That's what we were watching.
You got to watch TV at dinner
when there was a TV on for dinner. Yes, I mean I don't remember it being on when I was living in Pennsylvania because we were in a different room from where the TV was, but. When we moved to Virginia, the TV was like nearby, and so we would watch that while we were having dinner. So the news, or it'd be like right after dinner, and there was like nothing else to watch. So that was that. But you know, that makes it. I realize that nobody ever puts news programs on as their favorite shows, and I think 60 Minutes should probably be up there because it was probably the most watched news program of all time.
But then they had Andy Rooney on it, which made everyone be like, "Fuck this shit."
Well, no, he was a draw for the show.
Yeah,
for the longest time.
People over 60 who were senile.
Not when he first came on. When he first that happened later on as his eyebrows got bushier and bushier.
They were huge. I guess I never.
They started to take over his eyeballs.
Was he very like erudite and insightful at one point? I don't know. Was he?
I think it was. He was. You know, what was the name of that syndicated columnist? Who was very, very popular for a long time early like in the
Dear
70s.
Abby?
No, not Dear Abby. He was a comic columnist. I can't remember his name for the life of me. I would definitely be showing my age if I could come up with his name.
The guy did Christmas Story?
Huh?
Christmas Story. The movie.
No.
Gene Shepard?
No, not that guy. It was a guy who had like a little bit of a lisp whenever he talked in person. And he wore glasses, and just can't remember his name. And I can't remember.
Cody.
No, not Truman Capote. I can't remember his name, and I can't remember why I was bringing him up anymore. Oh yeah, because I was going to say he reminded me kind of Andy Rooney. Like Andy Rooney came out of that genre of comedy, which was like political satire comedy, and that's where Andy Rooney kind of fit in within 60 Minutes because he was the satirical part of 60 Minutes, where the rest of the parts of it were not satire. They were just strictly news pieces.
When I started watching 60 Minutes, he was just the kvetching, demented old man ranting about...
Wait, how old were you when you started watching it? I mean, he wasn't that old at the time.
Whatever, he was an idiot when I started watching it. It was like, why is this guy on this show? That like, because I loved... Even as a little kid, I loved the whole idea of like getting big, powerful people. Like when Mike Wallace would be like, oh, but what about this document? And the CEO of Exxon would be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Oh. You know, like the gotcha moments.
Right.
That's why I think people love 60 Minutes. It was like, I think they call it speaking truth to power.
Well, not only that, 60 Minutes gave more long-form news than the normal news programs did. So I think that's what made their popularity. Plus, they had kind of like celebrity broadcasters on as well. So they had Mike Wallace, and they had Morley Safer, and they had Dan Rather, and there was like a Harry Reasoner, I think was the fourth one on whenever it
Mike Wallace was a pretty boring guy, but he also did that thing where he was unrelenting, where like watching the CEO squirm. That was like what 60
Well, you know, it helped Mike Wallace too. He was a bit of a dick too. So he had like people he could go after to be his
dick.
What's that?
I don't know if that's a dickish thing to do.
No,
like,
but he was in general. You could tell from his demeanor, like this guy's basically a dick. It's like, and I think that's what worked in his favor with dealing with guys like that.
Do you think he would have been a Me Too like now? Do you think he's that much of a dick? Like,
I don't know if he was like molesting or like abusing women. I can't say that.
Everyone did back then. It was a thing. That's what you did.
It was the way you
did. You hire a beautiful intern because she's beautiful, and then you hit on her.
So you think Cronkite was doing that too?
I'm sure. I would not be surprised.
David Brinkley was like abusing his female staff as well.
Yeah.
What's the biggest name of all? Edward R. Murrow? Was he?
I'm sure. I would not be surprised. Captain Kangaroo.
Good night, good luck, and nice bra.
Yeah. And is that a pubic hair in your Coke? But I mean, like. But fucking Captain Kangaroo was probably like hitting on girls. The only one who didn't was Mr. Rogers.
I think the t-shirt, is that a pubic hair in your Coke? I think you've got a t-shirt slogan there, Craig.
Well, that's an old thing. It's
an old thing? What?
It's the Anita Hill.
What's an old thing?
Remember the Chief Justice? What's the black Supreme Court
He's not Chief Justice, but he could one day be.
I'm sorry, you're right. Supreme Court Justice. Anita Hill, remember?
Clarence Thomas is who you're talking about.
Thank you. And that was like one of the like sleazy weird things he said to her.
He said, "Is there a pubic hair in your coat?"
Yeah, he saw like she said, "Oh, there's a hair in my coat." I was like, "Is it a pubic hair?" But he said it in a way that was like, yeah.
Well, is there any good way to say that?
No, that's why it's a really bad come on. It is.
Oh my!
It is not a good come on. But I would like to say that.
Yes. What would you like to say, Greg? As
great TV shows.
Yeah.
That I can't even start because every month I see some amazing show like fucking Fargo. That Fargo show.
Yeah.
That shit's better than most movies I've ever seen in my life.
That's another show that I tried to get into and I couldn't get into.
So good. I mean, there's so much good stuff.
Well, maybe it's like I tried the first 2 episodes and it just didn't grab me, and so I just never watched anymore.
Oh,
like people said that about True Detective too, the show with Woody Harrelson, and Angus McFadden. What the hell's his name? Matthew McConaughey. I've made him really Scottish.
Angus McFadden? Was that the janitor from The Simpsons?
No, I think he was. He's an actor who was in like Braveheart. Anyway, regardless, McConaughey, and I watched a few episodes of that, but I just can't seem to really get into it. And that's supposed to be the best season of that show is when those guys were in it.
Yeah.
So it's like it's challenging sometimes for me to like get into shows. Like one of the shows that's being lauded is a show called Freaks and Geeks, and it was only on for like 1 season, and it was the show that kickstarted the careers of Judd Apatow and Seth Rogen and what's his name who was in Spider-Man. Sometimes I just can't remember.
I know you're talking about.
The guy who was Spider-Man's buddy, and
I can't think of his name.
Right, who's recently kind of gotten Me Too'd as well. But yeah, so it's like I tried watching that, and it didn't really sink in. I will say, best fantasy show of all time, excluding Twilight Zone, which kind of like strided the line, would be Game of Thrones.
I saw the first season. Doesn't everyone hate the last season of Game of Thrones? Or didn't they shit the bed?
No, a lot of people say that because they didn't like the ending, but I was actually fine with the last season. Yeah. But it's like the last episode of Sopranos. A lot of people hate it as well.
I love it,
but I was fine with it. I'm like, I can be fine with it. And it's like the general controversial things, like the movie No Country for Old Men. A lot of people hate the ending of that movie too. I'm totally cool with
a lot of dumb people don't like endings that aren't just like the hero wins, hooray! And
right, I know they want their happy ending and they don't get it. And so at the end of Game of Thrones, there was no happy ending.
But I
think that's why people hated it.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, and I think it was also rushed because of the fact that the author of the books hadn't finished writing the books, and so they're kind of like just scooping things up and throwing it at the wall. But at the same time, you could say that about all of the seasons of Game of Thrones too. I think just the fact that there was that type of show of that quality in general on the air, I give it a pass for a crappy bad season, which wasn't really that crappy.
I would actually say though, I guess it's fantasy. Walking Dead, even though it bothers me so much as a zombieologist,
Yeah.
Things they do annoy me. But as far as the quality of writing and the characterization and how these characters are so complex, you never know what these characters are going to do.
I'm going to
Just
give
like-
Walking Dead. I mean, I love Walking Dead.
I think
I'm going to give
Dead's a
Walking Dead
really
credit
well
for
done
probably the best villains of any TV
Yeah.
show that anybody, because those of any show I've seen, I think they've had the best villains because they take people who would have been relatively normal humans and turn them into monsters.
because it's an extreme world.
Right,
Zombies.
exactly. And it's like
So you-
people turn into that. I'm like, that when it's like sociologically vicious. It is where normal people kind of become worse, like their worst qualities come out in that particular show. So I want to give them credit for that. I mean, Walking Dead is like a fantasy show. It's like a science fiction type show. And I like it, but I can't put it up there. But man, I've certainly seen the first season like 4 or 5 times. And numerous seasons after that I've seen 3 or 4 times
That's some
too.
fun action. That first season.
What's
This is
that?
Great. This is like great action.
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, I was totally hooked in the first scene of Walking Dead. You know, where just the guy wakes up, or first episode I made, where he wakes up in a hospital and doesn't know what the
Oh, I
hell's going
hated
on.
that though.
You hated
That
that.
Yeah,
Why did you
because
hate
where-
that part?
Why is there nobody around? Why are there no zombies running around this huge city? Why are there no dead bodies everywhere? He's just like, where? He's like the Omega
But there
Man.
were dead bodies. He found the dead bodies.
Eventually, he found
Yeah.
some. But at first, he's just like, where's everyone gone? What's going on? It's like, there'd be mass carnage. There'd be tons of zombies in the middle
Yeah,
of
but probably what happened. I mean, if we're going to go into digging into Walking Dead, like a theory that I could see in my mind how it would work is that all the zombies just roamed off, looking for people running away from them. So people would have been running away from them, going elsewhere, and the zombies would have followed them.
But the cities in Walking Dead are always the hot spots for zombies because there's lots of people in cities.
Uh huh.
But when he wakes up, there's none.
Yeah,
So,
but he wasn't really in a big city. He was in a small
But
town.
I thought he was in Atlanta.
He was outside of Atlanta. He was like outside
No,
of the
but-
suburbs of Atlanta.
No, but when he comes out of the hospital, that's a pretty decent sized city he's in.
Not
It
really.
wasn't like his little town that he lived in.
I
when he
don't
got
think so.
shot.
I think he was in like a regular
It
hospital in
looked
his town.
pretty big.
I mean, it was like a multi-story hospital,
I know, and there was
but I don't
buildings.
think he wasn't actually in Atlanta. He wasn't a sheriff in Atlanta. Sheriffs, in that he was in like some county outside of Atlanta.
Okay, considering that 90% of humans were dead, most of them would be zombies. There'd be zombies everywhere. He would have seen one zombie. I know he does. Eventually,
Yeah.
after like 2 days of walking around, being like, "Where is everybody?" But wouldn't you have seen many dead people on the ground? It was just like it was almost like the world disappeared. All humanity disappeared, which is kind of an interesting.
I think it's you're getting too sucked into the specifics of it all,
well,
as
yeah.
opposed to just allowing yourself to have the ride.
I've seen that ride done so many times that it's annoying at this point. It's like, where are the zombies? Where are the dead people? I know it's cool to be like, I'm the last man on earth. What's going
Yeah.
on? I'm Omega Man.
I'd never seen one like that though. I'd never seen it set up in that way
it was
before.
Very well done.
Yeah. Anyways, enough about Walking Dead. So, what else we got? So, what other shows are in your top 5 million? Quick,
5
rattle
million?
them off.
Uh,
Nope, too late.
I know. There's too many to think about.
I've totally forgot one, which is definitely in my top 10 and probably in my top 5 is Mad Men. That was such a well done, well made show. I
did
really
the
enjoyed
first
that.
season. I'd agree, and then everything after that was just like, fun nostalgia for looking at the 60s.
Oh,
First
no,
season
it
was
went.
really heavy.
It was
and
more.
interesting.
You missed like some really interesting drama later on, man.
Well, no, I think I missed the last 2 seasons. I stopped
I'm missing
watching
half of your face though. Why'd you go off screen?
because I didn't know what the hell's going on in this kitchen.
Should
I'm
I go back
afraid
to
I'm
the
not gonna-
fireplace?
I'm afraid I'm not going to blue cup off the shelf with my hoodie.
We'll go back to the fireplace. You seem more comfortable there. There we go.
No, I know. Mad Men, I think the first season earned how people were just like, this is one of the best shows ever.
Uh,
And it seemed like it just became this thing of like, oh, we're gonna go year by year, and it was very fascinating, just the nostalgia, time travelness of it. Like,
Yeah.
this is what it was like to live in 1964 in
So you
America.
couldn't get into the characters.
I did, but it was kind of on a soap opera level. Like, ooh, is he gonna leave his wife? And now,
You know, all dramas are on a soap opera level.
no, but it wasn't the complexity of, like you were saying, about Sopranos characters and Wire
Yeah.
characters.
But there was
wasn't about-
complexity there. They like delved into the feminist aspects of the time and the characters who were like trying to
Yeah.
work their way through that. And then, you know, the alcoholism was like a major factor within that particular industry. You know, and then like working
Yeah.
that, and then the buying and selling of the business, and that's something that you don't really see so much
But I think it
at
was
that
very
deep of a level.
there was some things though when they were doing that social stuff where I was like called bullshit on, like when that art guy from Italy, I think he's from Italy,
Uh-huh.
he's just like very frank. He's just like, oh, I'm homosexual. And all these guys who were like probably vote Republican, probably are, you know, very conservative as far as that kind of shit. They're just like,
You know, in
oh,
that
okay,
era, Democrats and Republicans were actually pretty similar.
no, you're right,
Yeah.
social stuff. But
Yeah.
still, nobody was that cool with gays then. It was pretty fucking rare where like guys who were like running a huge corporation would be like, I mean, back then, guys who ran a huge corporation would hire Jews. I mean, they were like, ah, no, you go down the street. We don't like Jews here. I mean, and this guy's just
Well,
like,
it's the
okay.
60s, right? It's the
Yeah.
late 50s, early 60s. They hired Jews
Well, and advertising for sure.
because after World War II, there was a lot of sympathy for the Jewish community.
Yeah.
Even though there's a lot of closet haters, closet
But there was-
KKK people.
But there was not sympathy for the gay community back then, I'm pretty sure. I think one person in the office would have been like, I don't want to fucking work with this, you know.
Well,
F-
they couldn't prove it.
No, he said it. Remember, he was very liberal about it. He just like said, oh, I like men. Like that was his interest.
Oh yeah, I guess I don't remember which character that was.
He had no shame. He was in like 2 episodes.
Oh, okay.
And he was a gorgeous, like Italian guy. So of course all the girls had crushed on him. And then he told one of the girls, and then it came up in a meeting. And
Was he
they were
from
like,
Italy?
Yeah, he was like a
Oh,
Italian.
okay, so that's how they get away with it, is because he's Italian.
No, but I mean,
They
Italian.
do that in Italy. It's like
I
the
went
jokes
to
about the
Italy.
Greeks.
I went to Italy in the 2000s, and they were
Uh-huh.
not cool. We're more cool with gays than Italy is. They
Well, that's why he left Italy.
could be. But the fact that
Maybe.
he was so open about it, and then like that these like, you know, upper middle class guys would just be like, I don't care, whatever.
Well, you know, a
Give
lot
me
of times
one
when it
guy.
comes to business, though, they excuse a lot of things as long as the person's bringing them money.
This is true. Like in Hollywood, all those if you ever look at old credits when you're watching an old movie,
And they were
it'll
all, a
always
lot
be-
of them run by closeted gays as well.
it'll always be like costumes by Divine, or like one word. Like all those costume designers in Hollywood were obviously flamingly gay, and they didn't even really hide it because they'd just be like by Fabulous. Like
By
These guys were-
Fabulous.
yeah,
Bob
seriously, they
Mackey.
just- No, it didn't say Bob Mackey. It would be some weird. These costume designers in Hollywood would just have like like Madonna. They just had one word, like by something. I can't.
Why,
get off
wasn't Liberace famous in the late 50s, early 60s?
Yeah.
And I remember there was like a major lawsuit that he took against a British publication back in the day because they said his show was fruit flavored, and so he sued them for libel for that.
Well, I wish that I hope they sued him later on and said, "You motherfucker."
They didn't, because I think by then sensibilities had changed a little bit. Wait, where are you going? You're leaving the
going nowhere.
fireplace.
I'm right
Greg
here.
has left me to myself. Well, this does bring us near the end of the program anyway, but there was one comedy I want to bring up that we hadn't mentioned, and it gets short shrift, and it's the Larry Sanders Show. And I think it was definitely a groundbreaking show in terms of comedy and what
It
they
was
did.
great at the time, but I
Yeah,
think Curb Your Enthusiasm has supplanted it
I don't think
as
so.
far as brilliant scripts.
Curb Your Enthusiasm, I've watched every season, and I enjoy the show, But the fact is, for me, Larry Sanders beats it hands down.
Yeah, I love Larry Sanders. Believe me, I love that show.
Yeah, it was just a great comedy. All right, so let's wrap this up. So,
Wait, can I just say though, we have to
Sure.
add two great comedies of all time,
yeah,
except for the last season, the Netflix season.
Love
Arrested
Lucy?
Development.
Arrested Development. That was a great show. I
But
agree with
ignore that last season that Netflix did because that was shit.
you.
They jumped the shark, if you will.
Oh yeah, I hate the term jump. The term "jump the shark" is "jump the shark" for me.
It's old, but it's a term. What is he gonna say?
Uh,
Do you have something better?
not good anymore.
Sure, but
The
jump
point
the
of
shark.
the point of no return, the point where it stopped being good. I think that works as well,
What's
and
wrong
it
with
did
just
before
jump the shark as
Fonzie
a
ever before Fonzie ever did his water skiing. You know, which I don't even remember that episode. I think where quote unquote Happy Days really jumped the shark is when they brought in Mork from Ork. I think that's when they really left
the best.
life behind. No, that's when they went out of the realm of actual reality and they went insane. That's where Happy Days went truly insane, was when they brought in a freaking alien.
But their reality was shitty and insipid, so who cares? Go nuts. Change, mix the formula up.
I mean, yeah, they had a little bit of magic in there whenever Fonzie could get whatever record he wanted on the jukebox by
when you were
betting.
8 years old.
But bringing somebody in from an extraterrestrial into that environment was just silly. It was insane.
But who cares? It's a shit show. This whole show is shit. It's like saying, "Oh, this piece of dog shit was pretty good."
Well, it's like if they're going to go that silly, then they need to really go
raisin in it.
silly. They need to go even sillier than if they're going to bring in an alien.
Work was pretty silly.
I know, but I'm saying even sillier. If they're going to bring in an alien, then they needed to move, instead of making it like a normal thing that an alien would just come to your door. Hey, this is all kind of normal.
Have zombies attack the
Right,
town.
why not? Why not have the entire town turn into zombies? You know,
It
and
could've
then
been
Mork
great.
has to fight them off. You know, with his egg powers. Whatever they have.
His egg powers. It was a ship that looked like an egg. He didn't have egg powers.
He did. He had to fly and be free.
He
Don't you
couldn't
remember?
control eggs or boil them by looking at them. He just had a ship that happened to look like an egg shape. That's it.
It's the same thing, Greg. You don't understand. If you travel by egg, you get the powers of an egg. It's like if you travel by bicycle, you have the powers of a bicycle, Greg. Did you know that? You have 10 speeds if you have a 10-speed bike. Personally.
So I just hit a button and like walk to work 10 times faster.
Right.
I just haven't realized.
And occasionally your pants get stuck in your own spokes. So, anyway, all right. Well, this has been the top 5 million television shows of all time, and we'll have to just take it up another time. So to get
we'll be
other
continuing this for the
4,999,993 shows that we didn't quite reach.
This is our show from now on, guys, for the next 5 years. So just so you know,
We'll
if you're
only be
wondering
talking about shows.
what we're talking about next week. It's gonna
Best
be this.
kid shows of all time. It's Captain Kangaroo. There's Mr. Rogers. There's The Muppet Show. There's Sesame Street. There's was the New Zoo
Pee-wee's
Review.
Playhouse.
Pee-wee's Playhouse, which was the best show for kids who were raised by hippies. Anyway, Greg, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to convey to our listening audience?
That you shouldn't watch that much TV in the first place. And,
That's true.
But there's some really good stuff on TV, but most of it's shit. So
Like most of the stuff that I watch. That's true.
Oh, we didn't even get into what Matt watches normally. So,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, even if you watch TV a lot and you just try to stick to quality, it's like, just live your life. Life is still better than
Just
the best
live your
TV show.
life.
Yeah, like I watched The Wire.
Yeah.
You know, I was obsessed by it. But I probably would have been better off just going to a bar and maybe meeting a new friend and chatting with people and hanging out. TV is in real life, but you might as well, if you're going to watch TV, watch some good shit.
Okay. But if you went to a bar to find a new friend, you couldn't talk to them about TV because you're not living your life.
You could. Because what you talk about with them will be like
So we need to go back to the days before television, before radio, perhaps even before books, and discuss what entertainment was like then. And
No,
what
you can still do it though.
and it could be that way again.
Doesn't matter how much entertainment there is, you can still actually live and ignore, because it's getting to the point where that's all people talk about. That's all people want to do. And believe me, that's all I do.
I think it takes us back to one of our early shows in the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble Bicker, which is entertainment is bad for you.
Yeah.
You remember that one?
It does. It's avoiding life. It's like I seriously when I
and that includes alcohol. Alcohol is avoiding life.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
But all these things I do just because, like, yeah, there's some things you can't figure out in life. It's like, it's like, oh, if I wasn't watching this TV show, I'd be bettering myself. It's like, nah, I'm stuck where I am. My shitty niche. You know, I'm a grunt. I'm a peon. I'm sure if I was brilliant, I could figure out a way to get out of it. But I'm not.
Well, I thought I'd help you live life by being on this ski lift right now.
This is nice. I've never been on a ski lift in my life. I've never skied.
If you hadn't been watching so much television, you could have gotten onto a ski lift.
I think I put skis on once, and it was just like for 5 minutes, and it was like, oh, I can't do this.
When I took my kids to the national parks last year, we actually got to ride a ski lift, even though there was no snow, and got to go up to the top of a mountain in the Green Tea.
That was just because you don't like to walk.
Well, no, it's because it was like it would have been a really, really long walk. I wouldn't have survived. I did walk once I got off the ski lift. And then we walked to the top of the mountain.
For 20 feet?
I think it was 35. I made it an extra 35 feet. Anyway, so this has been our client, the top 5 million television shows of all time. And we talked about a few of them. And this is the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker.
Your consultation with the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker has ended. You may pay your retainer at www.qsblaw.org. Please exit to the right of the water cooler and grab a candy from the front desk. We hope to see you again soon, but you need to leave now. I said leave. Why don't they ever listen? Get out! Get out!